Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Lomangino, Director of Consulting at KGL, and today we're here to talk about mission-aligned growth, how societies and smaller publishers can make strategic choices that increase volume and impact without compromising quality or values. So let me acknowledge right here at the outset one important fact. When some people hear the word growth, they automatically assume lower standards. We want to reframe that discussion. Thoughtful growth can support financial sustainability, expand visibility and influence, engage your community, and build resilience. And who couldn't use a little bit more resilience amid the seemingly never-ending stream of shocks that hit scholarly publishing these days? So you've all seen the trend lines, and I've heard discussion about them in the preceding sessions, and certainly we've seen this in our consulting practice with dozens of societies every year. These programs are struggling. They're facing revenue pressure, while the large commercial publishers are gaining market share. Volume plays a central role in both of these stories. So our goal today is to surface practical strategies that societies can use to compete more effectively while staying true to their mission. So here's our plan for today. We'll have 3 talks, approximately 10 to 12 minutes each, followed by some Q&A. You'll hear about optimizing existing journals, launching new titles, and rethinking editorial structures. We'll talk about successes, stumbles, and lessons learned. So let's get started. Our first speaker today will be Sophia Anderton, Chief Executive Officer of BJU International. Sophia oversees the journal and online education programs for urologists and brings more than 20 years of experience in scholarly publishing. She also serves on the ALPS board, chairs its training committee, and co-chairs the NISO Transfer Standing Committee. Sophia is going to talk today about strategies that they found to be effective for engaging global communities and driving content to their journal portfolio. Next, we'll have Gwen Twillman, Chief Program Officer at the American Society for Nutrition. Gwen oversees ASN's publishing portfolio, education programs, and business development activities. She has more than 35 years worth of experience in nonprofit management and has helped build the ASN journal portfolio into a globally recognized brand with exceptional content. Gwen will be talking about a significant restructuring at their portfolio that they're undertaking to help drive growth and impact. And finally, our last speaker will be Claire Curtis, Director of Content and Engagement at the Biochemical Society. Claire provides strategic oversight of the Society's content across publishing, education, and training and policy remits. In addition, Claire oversees the Society's many communities, including early career researchers and industry, and engagement with the Society's membership. Claire is going to be talking about growth strategies that didn't quite turn out as anticipated and some lessons learned from that experience. So with that, please welcome our first speaker, Sophia Anderton.
Thank you. So I'm going to focus on the second part of the title of this session on mission-aligned strategies. So as I said, I'm at BJU International. Just a very small bit of information about us. We are slightly unusual in that we're a charity that publishes. We're not a society as such. We don't have a membership. We publish 2 journals and have an online learning platform and do various other things in promoting urological education, but we have no members. So that means we don't have an automatic community. We have to work harder to promote our journals and reach our urological community. So a bit of background of where we came from. We've got a flagship journal. So there's a bit of a boat theme, bear with me. So we've got a flagship journal, BJU International, and it was launched in 1929. Until about 2013, that was all we did. It's It was the only activity. It was very successful, very high quality journal. It's always been independent, never associated, or never belonged to a society or a membership association. But the problem with that ship was it was a bit leaky. The focus was very heavily on quality, and to the extent that we were rejecting lots and lots and lots of papers. This wasn't great for community relations. It was not great for a volume-based business model. There were limited financial opportunities. We were losing market share. We were losing brand awareness because there were just fewer and fewer articles relative to the growing urological space. So what we did is we added to our fleet. I told you there was a boat theme. And we launched BJUI Compass. This is a fully open access title, sound science journal, accepting submissions in its own right. We launched it in March 2020, and if you remember what was going on in March 2020, that perhaps wasn't the best time to have launched a journal. But actually, it's been really, really successful. It's started taking transfers from the main flagship BJUI, as well as accepting submissions directly itself. This is a very mission-aligned strategy. It's good for our community. We're being able to publish more papers for our urological community. It's good for people who require that publish in an open access journal. It's good for the BJUI name. There are more articles that we're publishing with BJUI as the title, and it's good for finances. It really is, it is helping. So we're able to focus on quality, quantity, community engagement, and business success, the things that I would say were the 4 pillars of journal development. But I'm sure that kind of model is relatively familiar to a lot of people. Lots of societies and publishers have done similar models. And so back to what else we've done. Our community is at the heart of what we do. But who is our community if we don't have members? We don't have that automatic community, but we've had to find it in other ways. So what we've done is we've piggybacked onto other societies. And we reach their members through our journals. We've got official agreements with about 35 associations of urological associations all around the world. And that has given us a ready-made community. And some of those, in fact, associations are umbrella associations that lead us to even more people. We've got, as I say, we've got formal relationships, and it's worked as a really good mutual relationship. In fact, through those 35 or so relationships, we're reaching urologists in 75 different countries across the world. We've got direct contact with over 10,000 users, urologists around the world, and that number is growing all the time. The majority of these relationships have been formed in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, so it is growing all the time. And in addition to those 10,000 direct relationships we've got, where we've got the direct email addresses and the permission to contact them, we also have reach to many thousands more through their associations. And part of the agreement we've got is that they will send out a certain number of communications to their members each year on our behalf. And it's really unlikely that we would have had anywhere near this number of members if we'd launched a membership program on our own at the time when we launched these relationships. And what you'll notice is many of these are in sort of the lower middle income regions of the world. These are the countries that were not our traditional audience for our high quality flagship journal. But we're bringing them in, we're bringing them into the BJUI name and the BJUI family. But how are we doing that? So the reason that people have wanted to make associations with us is we've got something to give to them. In 2013, we started to build BJUI Knowledge, which is a self-published online education platform. It's a resource like nothing else within urology. It's got over 450 self-directed learning modules that are each sort of 40, 45 minutes long, been developed by urologists, all peer-reviewed. It's like an interactive living library of content of everything a urologist would need to know, and we self-publish that ourselves. the bulk of it is modules and sort of examples like this. We've got practice questions, surgical videos, multiple choice questions, certificates. The associations we work with really like this, and we give it to those who are urologists in training free of charge as part of our charitable mission. And anyone who's associated with an association that is a fully trained urologist gets a discount. So we get an income stream through that. And the associations do really like it. A lot of them are starting to tell us that they're making it compulsory as part of their training programs, because a lot of the associations are the boards of urologies for the training. They're incorporating it into curricula. And some of them have told us that they've stopped recommending that their trainees use some of the really long established textbooks and are telling them to use BJUI knowledge instead. So we're really forming with the BJUI name with lots of people who would never have come across us before. But we're tying that back into the journals. So part of the agreements we have with many of the societies is that BJUI is their official journal of their society, because many of them don't have the journal themselves. And that's driving submissions. As I said, we have communications to their members, so their members all get our e-talks automatically. They have the access to knowledge. They have discounts on APCs, discounts on journal subscriptions. We've got some of their editors from their associations who are represented, people from their associations represented on our editorial boards. And then in return, we sometimes provide international speakers at their conferences, people who they perhaps wouldn't have been able to attract otherwise. And we've been running some workshops on publishing, how to review, how to author, those sorts of things. So we're really making it as a two-way relationship that we're both giving in to that relationship. But we do have to work hard, and we spend a lot of time, different trustees or myself or some of my team, going around and meeting people at conferences and really listening to what the needs are. And we've developed a whole load of more educational resources that are relevant to parts of the world where there are different urological features that we wouldn't have covered before. Another example of something we're doing is we have 2 supplements every year from one of our associations in Australia and New Zealand, and we have dedicated editorial board members from that region, and they solicit the best content from the region, but also promote our journals to that region. And actually, we probably get most of the good urological content coming from Australia and New Zealand through that strong relationship with that society. We've done this because we don't have a membership, but I think something like this could be really applicable for those who do have members, or if you're trying to solicit members in different parts of the world that you perhaps haven't had natural reach. So my final slide, and going back to that boat analogy, so we have sort of flipped our flagship model. We've been reaching in new countries, new communities, new urologists through BJUI knowledge. That's become, the little sailing ship has become the flagship, going out and reaching new communities. There are people who come to us as a publisher through BJUI knowledge first, then they learn about our journals, and we've been starting to get new submissions and growth through impact and engagement and submissions, all through this sort of almost reverse model of going through our education product first. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So thank you very much.
So much, Sophia. Sounds like you've really been hitting on that theme of community engagement that's been running through the conference. Yeah, that's great. All right, Gwen Twillman up next.
Thank you all so much. I'm a first-time meeting attendee, and it's been really great to be here. I've enjoyed all the sessions so far. So thanks so much for sticking around for this session. So as Kevin noted, my name is Gwen Twillman. I work for the American Society for Nutrition. We are a research society dedicated to advancing the science and practice of nutrition. We have over 8,000 members around the world. About 1/3 of our membership resides outside the United States. We're a small society in that we have a staff of 14, but we're very lucky that we have a CEO and a board of directors that is really willing to take some chances and to innovate over time. Currently, our publishing revenue counts for about half of our annual income. And like many of you, we have many threats that are currently facing us. For the last 7 years, we have outsourced our publishing, and we currently partner with Wiley on editorial services and Elsevier with our marketing, production, and distribution. And we also work closely with Kevin and his team at KGL on strategic planning and other initiatives. So let me tell you a little bit about the ASN Journal portfolio. We have 4 journals. Our first journal, the Journal of Nutrition, was launched in 1928, and so we're going on almost 100 years with this journal. It was initially launched as a basic science publication, but has expanded over the years and currently draws a very diverse set of research, including epidemiology, clinical research, of course, basic science, and other niches in the area of nutrition. I think our most widely known journal is the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And in fact, I think, at least in the US, AJCN is more widely known than our society itself. So it has a good read and just a great reputation as being a very rigorous, clinically focused journal. In 2010, we launched Advances in Nutrition, which is our reviews journal, and it quickly rose up to be our journal with the highest impact factor, not surprisingly. And in 2017, we launched our Gold Open Access Journal, Current Developments in Nutrition, and that was always intended to be the journal that we transfer down the pipeline. Hasn't always worked the way we want it to, but that was our original intention. Okay, so I'll just review some of our current strengths and challenges that we're facing right now. I mentioned about AJCN, but I think our portfolio as a whole is recognized globally for its rigor and trust in science. And we know, and this has come up several times today, this whole field of our area of misinformation, disinformation that is proliferating, and nutrition is one of those areas where it's rampant right now. So we take great pride in having rigorous process. We have a really rigorous peer review process, and we get back annually in our author surveys that authors really appreciate that good review process because their paper comes out as a much better product before it went in. Also, we have just fabulous editors. These are leaders in our field. And we have just wonderful editors-in-chief and editorial boards and we really seek ways to engage our nutrition community throughout our portfolio. So I think that certainly is one of our biggest strengths, is just the backing of the nutrition science field. Challenges are numerous, and I think probably similar to what many of you all face. We have changing business models, funding mandates. About 30% of our research is US government-funded research. About 5% of our research that we publish comes from Gates Foundation, and you may or may not know they recently struck up a pretty good deal with PLOS One, so it looks like all their research is going to be gone that way. So these are real things that worry us, of course. A lot of internal competition. Our editors-in-chief don't like to admit it, but there is certainly internal competition between our 4 journals. And overall, overlapping scopes, I think, is become more and more of a problem over time. And really, the declining market share is something that keeps us up at night. And it pains me to show this next slide, but this is just a landscape of the nutrition science publishing arena. So back in 2002, there were 50 journals in the nutrition and dietetics category, and that more than doubled to 105 journals in 2023. We used to publish about 20% of all content in nutrition and dietetics, and that's gone down to 3%. So this is not good. You know, this is really challenging for us. And of course, we know it's just a big competitive landscape out there. We see these broad-based open access journals competing with us, branded portfolios that are really good about transferring content down the line, and of course, publications that can publish quicker and cheaper than we do. So several years ago, during the pandemic, our society launched a strategic planning task force that looked overall at our journal portfolio to determine what are some key steps we can take to improve our positioning and our market share. So we came up with a number of actionable key findings, which are listed on the slide. That we really need to take a step back, spend some time looking and differentiating our scopes within the journal, look how we can create efficiencies across the line so that we can improve time to publication, identify gaps in not only subject areas, but also geographical areas. There are a lot of niches, I'm sure like in other areas of science, a lot of niches in nutrition science, and that continue to emerge, and we gotta make sure we're well positioned to capture those new areas. We have to improve how we transfer our manuscripts, and I hate to say this, but we still uncover time after time instances where an author will submit to one journal, get rejected, it's transferred to another journal in the portfolio, rejected, and then give another option to transfer down the line, and after 2 times they're out, So it's, we gotta improve how we manage these transfers. And of course, we want to see how can we enhance overall our management to optimize growth in the future. So what we've been asking ourselves is, could we be more strategic if we take a better portfolio approach overall to our journal? To better have a content strategy, could this help us impact our metrics? Could we enhance the visibility of our journals by taking a broader, more portfolio approach to the journal activities? Could we streamline our editorial processes? Could we improve the transfer processes? These are the sort of questions that we've been asking ourselves. So I'm going to take one step back and just show you, and this is probably pretty typical of an editorial structure. This is our current structure right now. We have our 4 journals. Each journal has their editorial boards. About 4 years ago, we launched a shared statistical review board. And this board has just been a fabulous addition to our portfolio. So all clinical trials and other select methodologies, if we have a submission, they'll get sent to our statistical review board during the peer review process to make sure all the methods are scientifically sound. And it's been a great help to our editors-in-chief and our editorial boards. And it's been a great example of how this resource, we can have a shared resource across our 4 journals. So of course, though, we have a lot of challenges with that current structure. Our journals operate in silos. They don't always cooperate. We're often slow to respond to emerging trends. I mentioned earlier, we're not transferring things good throughout the portfolio. However, we did have a pretty good example of how we could do something shared, and that was our statistical review board. So this is the structure that we're moving to now. It's something that's been in the works over the last 6 or more months, and something that we're going to be working to complete the structure over this next year. But we are currently hiring a portfolio executive editor who is going to be a PhD scientist who's going to oversee the whole ASN brand and portfolio. That position will be charged with overseeing the editors-in-chief of each of our journals, is going to help us better differentiate our scopes throughout the portfolio, and have several other duties, which I'll get to in a second. Under the 4 journals will be a number of shared resources. I mentioned our statistical review board. We'll have certainly subsets of associate editors that report to the various journals, but we'll have shared ethics editors and other resources that the whole portfolio can share. And at the very top, there's a box that goes to the right of the portfolio executive editor. And this has come up in a couple sessions, but we are going to be piloting the use of subject editors to do triage, to review everything that comes in and try to get the bulk of the poor manuscripts out of the way so our editors-in-chief and our executive editor doesn't have to spend time on that. And that's something that our current editors-in-chief tell us over and over again, that they spend so much time doing initial triage, and that's where they need some help. So I mentioned the core, reviewed some of the other core duties. One thing I didn't mention, I'm going to go back a second in one slide. I mentioned our open access journal earlier, Current Developments in Nutrition, and this is the journal that's always we intended to be a transfer journal. But our new portfolio executive editor is going to assume the job of editor-in-chief for our transfer journal, Current Developments in Nutrition, and it just so happens that our current editor-in-chief for that publication is at the final, the 10th year of their term. So the timing actually works out great, and that'll provide a little bit of cost savings for us as well. So the editors-in-chief, their primary role is going to be to serve as ambassadors for the journal portfolio, make decisions, and certainly get content, direct content to associate editors. So at the end of the day, these are our desired outcomes that we have with this new approach. We're really hoping it's going to help us improve a strategic alignment overall. It's going to help us with our content strategy. We're hoping we'll be able to faster respond to trends and drive up submissions at the end of the day, and hopefully streamline some processes, build some efficiencies, and at the end of the day, improved our cost effectiveness. So that's step one that we're doing right now. We have a couple things in the future. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail, but the second thing we want to look at, it's going to take us a little while to get this portfolio editor thing going, but second thing we want to look at is this concept of a lighthouse journal. Would it make sense for one of our journals to serve as this lighthouse? And we're thinking our review journal, would it make sense to have some really high profile original research go to that journal to help raise that impact factor a little bit more and have that, again, be the lighthouse of the whole portfolio. And we continue to look at how we can best respond to the growing market in Asia because, like many of you, we get a lot of submissions from that area. And overall, as we go through these changes, we've identified some guiding principles that are really near and dear to us. We certainly want to maintain the quality and rigor of our portfolio, create efficient processes, attract the best science, make sure we have opportunities for our members to engage throughout our journal portfolio. And we want to be able to talk about it. You know, we want to have a strong communications plan so that we can talk to our research community along the way, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing, and hopefully what's working, what's not, and we'll adapt as we go. So that was a quick overview, but thank you for your attention. Oh, one more quick thing. My email's up here. If any of you are doing something similar or have something in mind, I'd love to hear from you because I always love talking to people in the industry, so thanks.
Thanks so much, Gwen. Sounds like ambitious plans afoot at the Society. That's great. I mean, the environment requires it, I think, in a lot of cases. Great. Claire is up next.
In relation to a growth opportunity that we had and give some sort of lessons learned from that growth because it didn't quite work out quite as planned. I'm based at the Biochemical Society. Portland Press is the wholly owned publishing arm of the Biochemical Society. All of the profits from the publishing arm are returned to the Society for them to carry out their charitable objectives. And over 85% of the Society's current income is from the publishing activities. So it's a really key role of the Society. Our current portfolio looks like this. So we have 2 research titles published fully open access this year through Read and Publish and Subscribe to Open. We have 1 fully open access title, which is our Sound Science title, which is published open access through article publishing charges. We have our reviews journals, again, published fully open access through Read and Publish and Subscribe to Open. And we have a society magazine that's freely available to everybody. It's not just a member magazine, it's completely freely available online. Pre-2014, our portfolio looked very different. We had a partner publishing program and we had a book program. There was an external review, and strategically the decision was made that we would focus our efforts on the Society's own publications rather than the book program and the partner publishing. And that resulted in a review of technologies and staff and really consolidation of all of that. But it was really felt that there was an opportunity for growth, particularly with Society's own portfolio and with open access titles. So 2 main opportunities were identified. The first was the growth in the Sound Science fully open access title. That flipped from a subscription title to fully open access in 2012. And as it was Sound Science, it really felt that there was an opportunity for that growth. I'm not going to go into detail on the growth there. That would be a whole different talk. But the other opportunity was whether there was an opportunity to launch a new open access title. The questions really asked ourselves was whether there was a gap in our portfolio currently, and was there an area in the molecular and cellular biosciences where we were seeing growth as well. So our expertise as a society really, and a lot of our portfolio, is in the molecular and cellular signalling. The Biochemical Journal is our flagship journal. That launched in 1906, and the Society itself also has a lot of knowledge within the molecular and cellular signalling area. We thought that there was a gap in our portfolio in relation to neuroscience. We didn't really get many submissions within that area. And then when we looked at the data, there was increased funding and research output in the neuroscience area, so we thought there could be an opportunity here for us to grow. So we launched a new journal, Neuronal Signalling, in 2017. It was a fully open access title with article publishing charges waived in the first year. As everybody's journals usually are, it had an international editorial board with expertise across the subject area. And at the time, it was the first European society-owned, fully open access journal focusing on signalling within neuroscience. And it really aimed to sort of try and bridge a gap between the sort of molecular biology and neuroscience area, and to apply the expertise that we had as a society to the field of neuroscience. So this graph shows the submissions from 2017 to 2023. Blue bars are submissions, orange bars are publications, and you can see that other than a peak in 2021, which was COVID, so we had a lot more submissions in all of our titles, the submissions and publications were relatively low right through the year. We weren't really seeing much growth over the number of years that we were publishing the journal. Barriers to publishing really came down to 3 main areas. The journal wasn't indexed, so Web of Science wouldn't consider the journal until there was more publication volume, and authors didn't want to publish until we were in Web of Science. We did get listed in 2019 in PubMed and PubMed Central, so that did help a little bit with submissions. Article publishing charges, we did waive article publishing charges for the first year. Our read and publish institutions could publish at no cost. We did have editorial board waivers, so editorial board members could use that themselves, or they could gift those to potential authors. And we had our usual research for life waivers and discounts. We underestimated competitor journals. There were some very well-established titles out there that many of you will know, Journal of Neuroscience being one of them. But also at the same time that we launched neuronal signalling, the British Neuroscience Association launched their new open access title, Brain and Neuroscience Advances. So they already had a very community really behind them because of the association really being neuroscience focused. So in 2021, Portland Press Board, that's the governance body of Portland Press, first started discussing the future of the title. And key items for consideration really were that journal growth was not as expected. We had put together an original business plan, and obviously the growth wasn't what we were expecting. The journal was financially making a significant loss. Staff time was being used on the title when this could be used elsewhere in the portfolio. The journal was offered as one of the journals covered by what had been our recently launched Read and Publish offering, so that was launched in 2020. And we really had to think about what value the new neuronal signalling title brought to that Read and Publish offering. And we had to balance sort of the offering to researchers versus the cost to the society. In 2022, the journal moved to what we call a ticking over scenario. So activities to drive content to the journal really was led by editorial board members. Staff commissioning that had spent a lot of time on the journal previously was kept to a minimum, and we really relied on that editorial board to bring in that content. The journal did remain part of the Society's Read and Publish offering, so that meant that authors at those institutions could publish without an article publishing charge. We continued marketing to our key audiences, and the journal was listed and included on the Science Open platform. And the aim really was to see whether or not the journal would attract submissions without the significant amount of commissioning work that had been taking place by the internal staff group. Unfortunately, in 2023, the decision was made to close the journal 6 years after launch. The main drivers for that decision was that there was really no sign of submissions increasing despite indexing in PubMed and the waivers for the article publishing charges. The journal was making a financial loss, and there was no sign of these losses being recovered or even moving to break even. It was felt that the loss of the journal from the Read and Publish offering really wouldn't make much impact. There wasn't a lot of recognition of the title in the research landscape. And obviously, really importantly, the time that we were spending on the journal could be used elsewhere to drive growth in our core titles. But it was still believed that there was an opportunity to drive neuroscience-related content to our journals. So rather than that being a new title, we actually really focused that neuroscience content in our two core titles, Clinical Science and Biochemical Journal. So we modified the scope of these existing titles to drive the relevant submissions to these two titles. We used some of the commissioning ideas that had been created for neuronal signaling and reworked them for Clinical Science and Biochemical Journal. We grew the editorial boards in the specific areas of neuroscience on these two titles, and we focused marketing activities on the relevant neuroscience fields for these two journals. On reflection, we probably followed the data far too much. When we were thinking about a title launch, we really looked at the data, but we didn't really discuss enough with the community. You really need to know that there is community enthusiasm for a new title, because you need to try and change researcher behaviour. So most researchers, now we've talked to them obviously, have very specific titles that they often submit to. So we have to really think whether the new offering was enough to make people change that behaviour. And also we had to remember our strengths. We were already known for a lot of what was in our portfolio, and therefore obviously maybe we should have just initially built on that knowledge of our own portfolio rather than starting a new journal. It's not always the answer to start a new journal. So our focus now is on the growth of our core titles. As Gwen said, sometimes there can be competition between titles, but we're really trying to focus on the complementarity of the portfolio. We have cross-portfolio themed collections, we have shared editorial board members, we have a cascade option between the journals, and the editors-in-chief of all of our titles sit on our publications committee to discuss shared policies and changes to the journals. The Society itself is just coming into a new phase of strategy, and obviously given the income that our journals provide to the Society, the journals are a key part of that Society strategy and strategic missions. So as we enter that new phase of strategy, the growth of our titles is a priority to ensure a financially sustainable and secure future for the Society, to ensure that the journals are at the heart of a diverse international bioscience community, and to really remain influential and impactful. My email's there if anybody has any questions or comments, and I thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Claire, for sharing that experience. Oh, go back. Okay. We often don't hear about things that didn't work, and yet it's so important to have that perspective in order to improve. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So we've got a few minutes for questions, and yeah, we've got one in the back. Can't hear you.
Okay, all right, there we go, too loud. Hi, I'm Kumas Bowling. I'm the Publications Director at SciAm, which is the Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics based in Philadelphia. I've discussed at SIAM over the years, now and then about having a transfer cascade journal. And and from a publishing point of view, there are many advantages to that. What I always run up against when I'm discussing it with editors and members of the community is, so we have a very high bar to publish in the SIAM journals. It means a great deal for your career if you're published in a SIAM journal. And basically I get the question, well, why would we have a journal where we send all the papers we've rejected that are still okay, but not quite high enough to jump over that bar for the top journals? Why would we put SIAM's name on those and essentially devalue what it means to be published with SIAM? And I don't wholly disagree with that, and so we have the discussion, but I never really come up with a truly compelling answer for that, other than it increases SIAM's footprint and you maybe publish other parts of the community you wouldn't normally publish. So I'm interested to hear how you've navigated those discussions where you're trying to balance editorial quality but also growing the publication program. Thank you.
So, Sophia, I think you might be...
I can say something?
Yeah.
I think the focus on a journal like that is to think about what the journal is, not what the journal isn't. And for us, launching a Cascade journal like that was a mission-led thing. It was about community, and it's about reaching more community and more people, and perhaps it being a stepping stone into our high-quality journal, it perhaps being the first place somebody published and then learnt and then used this as a learning opportunity for going into our flagship title. But also, yeah, as you said, it's about increasing the footprint and the name of our journal. But when I talk to researchers who say, oh, isn't this just a rejects journal? It's focusing on what the journal is, not what the journal isn't. I don't know if others have things to add.
Now, I would agree with that too, and we struggled with that a lot when we launched our Gold Open Access journal. But what we've been finding, and it's taken some time, that was launched in 2017, so it's taken that time to grow submissions for that, but what we're seeing, a lot of the things coming into that journal are really targeted research in a specific area, and often outside the US. So, community interventions in Colombia, I'm making that up, but just really targeted research, showing things throughout the world has become a home in this sort of journal. Replication studies have become a home, and but it has worked for us, but we had those initial concerns as well.
So, yeah, I would just add to that. You mentioned replication studies at the end there, and I think at a time when science is under threat, and more of the public, especially at home in the U.S., is seemingly mistrustful of science and are saying, well, what have you been hiding there? The fact that we have a place to publish negative studies, replication studies, reproducibility, all that kind of stuff, I think that's a compelling argument. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Miranda Ashby-Wood from the British Institute of Radiology. I was really interested in the editorial boards that you described with the overlapping editors across the whole portfolio. It's not something I've come across before. I understand the importance of obviously having that communication across that portfolio, as you said, so they're not siloed. Do you foresee any sort of challenges with having those shared? Yes, it's a portfolio and they're related journals, but they're different titles. They have their own personalities and their own goals. Do you foresee any challenges with the editors sort of losing that identity potentially of those different journals and then kind of just becoming four of the same? Yeah, we've thought about that a lot, and I honestly think the devil's going to be in the details, and a lot of this stuff are things that we're currently working out right now. But we certainly see, we are probably going to have subsets where we have a clinically oriented associate editors really target our clinical journal. But if we get a review in related to clinical nutrition, being able to tap into that subset of associate editors is going to be helpful. But again, we got a lot of things to work out. So I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, and I would just add, so one thing that's sort of in discussion totally at the concept phase, but what having a shared board would allow you to potentially do is to facilitate that transfer cascade where, let's say a paper is rejected at the flagship and you have an associate editor who's across the entire portfolio. You could potentially have that editor telling the author, well, we're sorry that you weren't accepted here. However, I can offer you potentially publication in another journal in the portfolio. So that's in the concept phase. As Gwen said, there's a lot to look at in terms of the details, but that's one of the exciting possibilities of that approach. Can we claw back 1 or 2 more minutes that we lost at the beginning here? Is that acceptable? Yeah? Okay, one more.
Catherine Brown, Company of Biologists. I had a sort of follow-up question, I guess, to Miranda's, which was when you talked about bringing in an executive editor across the journals, I wondered whether you were concerned about making the position of editor-in-chief a less attractive one because they lose autonomy, and if what they're doing is really just handling manuscripts rather than setting journal strategy, whether you had a concern from that perspective and sort of the impact on your community.
Yeah, so we have talked about that too, and we've been very open with our editors-in-chief. We didn't want to pull any surprises. We've been talking to them about it for about the past 18 months now, and trying to sell the positives to them. I think more than anything, they want help with triage, and I think this is going to bring them that. And we really don't want to take away anything from what they're doing. We're hoping to make their jobs easier. They don't have a lot of time right now to serve as an ambassador for the journal. I know that sounds crazy, but they really don't. And we're hoping this will help them do that. And, so I'm sure there'll be some pain points as we go, but right now we've been very open with our editors-in-chief, and I think we're moving forward in a collaborative fashion. But we'll report back.
All right. I think we probably should end it there. So thank you very much to the panelists. And I just want to make an announcement. We'll have a 25-minute coffee break, and afterward we'll have session 9, Licensing of Content in the Age of Generative AI, Obstacles, Opportunities, and ... optimism? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.